we have looked at the interview now, and I am praying that after the interview, you go to this next step. Before anyway we go to the induction, there is something which is very important which is supposed to happen after the interview. If ever you are going to be a successful applicant, you are going to be given a contract. Okay, so right now we are going to be discussing the contract. What is a contract? A contract is a legally binding written document between employer and employee. After the interview, you've been successful. It's supposed now you are now going to be given a contract. What is that contract? A legally binding written agreement between the employer and the employee. Okay, fine. Okay, so exactly what is it that we are going to discuss under the contract? Remember, what I'm always doing is we are discussing items or things that will come in the examination. The contract, these are the things that you need to know about the contract. The first thing are aspects to be included in the employment contract. What should you expect to see in an employment contract? And also the legalities of the employment contract. Of course, remember, whatever that is going to be done by the human resource function, they are supposed to comply with the acts. The acts, remember the acts that you have already looked at, okay? When you were beginning your grade 12, you looked at the Employment Equity Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, the Skills Development Act, the Labor Relations Act. So there are whatever that is going to be contained in this contract should be in alignment to the information that is in those acts. So we're also going to look at the legalities of the employment contract. Okay, but as for now, let's look at the aspects to be included in the employment contract. What is it that should be included in the employment contract? These are some of the questions that you find in the examination for a lot of marks, okay? The first thing, the name, the address, the contact details of the employer, personal details, address of the employee, the job title, the job description, we've already discussed those, the job specification, working hours, e.g. the normal time and the overtime, your salary. Of course, you would need to know how much you are going to be getting at the end of the month, the termination of the contract, and then leave conditions, the signature of both employer and employee. All these things that I've just mentioned will actually make that contract to be legally binding. Okay, all right. So now we're going to look at the legalities of the employment contract. Okay, number one, an employment contract is an agreement between the employer and the employee, and it is legally binding. It is law. It now acts as a law between you and the employer, an applicant and the employer. The employer and the employee must agree to any changes to the contract. Both parties must have contractual capacity to enter into a contract. Aspects of the employment contract can be renegotiated during the course of the employment period. Okay, another point, both parties must agree to any changes to aspects of the contract. Okay, the employment contract should include a code of conduct and a code of ethics. The employee needs to know how she is supposed to conduct himself in the work environment. Okay, it may not contain any requirements that are in conflict with the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. So in other words, I'm saying that as the employer is making an employment contract, he or she should make sure that whatever that they have included in that contract is not conflicting or is not going against what is indicated in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Okay. The remuneration package must be clearly indicated, including all the benefits. Yes. The employer must allow the employee to read the contract thoroughly before it is signed. So, you, as an applicant, the applicant is supposed to read and understand the contract very well. Sometimes you find out that some people would have to take the contracts to their lawyers and so forth before they can actually put their signatures. Okay? Because remember, After you have signed, this document becomes it becomes legally binding. It binds you, the applicant, and the employer. Okay, so all these are the legalities of the employment contract. Okay, so I hope you have understood. This information is very much important information on the contract, which you are supposed to know. It will help you to answer questions in the examination questions, especially if they ask you anything about the contract. Thank you.